Okay, what we're going to do here is we're going to try to make compounds out of some ions. In the first case, we're going to try to combine calcium and oxygen to make a compound called calcium oxide. In order to do this, it's imperative that you have some knowledge of the periodic table. For example, calcium is in group 2, and most chemists know that all the elements in group 2 always have a charge of +2, and that's going to help us a lot. So we know calcium's charge is obviously +2. Oxygen, 99.9% of the time, it will have a charge of -2. So the number one goal in writing the formula for these ions or these compounds, as they combine, the ions combine to make compounds, is that you have to make sure that the charges cancel out. In this case, it's a perfect match. One calcium has a charge of +2, one oxygen has a charge of -2, so therefore the chemical formula should be CaO. And that way, the two charges balance out, add up to 0, and calcium will give off 2 electrons, oxygen will gain 2 electrons, and everything is balanced. In the case of the next compound, it's not quite as easy. Barium is also in group 2, so we know that barium is going to have a charge of +2. Nitrogen is on the other side of the periodic table, and as a negative ion, it tends to have a charge of -3. Now, in order to get these ions, the charge for these ions to cancel, there's no way that you can take one of each. That it won't work. One barium is +2, one nitrogen is -3. So you've got to try to think of a common number between +2 and -3. And so I believe if you took 3 bariums, the charge of those 3 bariums would be +6. And if you took 2 nitrogens, the charge of those 2 nitrogens would be together would be -6. And that way +6 and -6 will cancel. And so the formula for the compound between barium and nitrogen is Ba3N2. In the case of copper chloride, or a combination of copper and chlorine, I need to give you some information. And the information I'm going to give you is copper has a charge of +2 in this case. Now, the reason I have to give you some information is because copper is a transition element, and the transition elements have a variety of charges. They change. In this case, calcium is going to have a charge of +2. Chlorine, if you look at its location on the periodic table, has a charge of -1. So in order to get the charges to balance, the 2 ions to bond together successfully, you're going to need 2 chlorines for every 1 calcium, or the chemical formula would be CuCl2. Now, the last example I'm going to do is a combination of a regular ion, aluminum, and what's called a polyatomic ion, NO3, or the nitrate ion. Now, finding aluminum on the periodic table, it has a charge of +3. Nitrate, the polyatomic ion, has a charge of -1. So in order to figure out the formula between these two particles, just as before, we're going to look at the charge, +3 and -1. In order to get them to balance, to be equal, we're going to have 3 nitrate ions for every 1 aluminum. So it would look like aluminum bonded to nitrate, bonded to nitrate, bonded to nitrate. And that way, the charges would all add up to 0. So the chemical formula, and this is the important part, how you write it, would be AlNO3 in parentheses 3. Now I'm putting it in parentheses because we're bonding on the entire nitrate ion, and we're doing it 3 times. And so it has to be done in parentheses.